spending money on. When the budget impasse, you had the treasurer and the governor just spending money willy-nilly on whatever they wanted, but yet our critical care units couldn't get funded. Students, kids, our schools, couldn't get funded. So all of that's going to stop on day one.
Now, as you talk about the issue of transparency, just in recent years, the last elected treasurer, Rob McCord, pled guilty to criminal charges. A few months ago, it became news that former state treasurer Barbara Hafer had pled not guilty, but she has a case coming up for a separate court case. That being said, what could you do to reinstill confidence in the office?
It has to do with who we elect. You could generate policy after policy after policy, which, fine, you know, we are going to have policies on ethics and what is the right thing to do and what happens when you're confronted with this situation. But ultimately, it comes down to who we elect in these positions. There's some people out there, well, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to ban this and I'm going to ban that. No, if you have a treasurer, who has integrity and a strength of character to deal with these misfits and evildoers, that are out there, you can put an end to it by how the treasurer conducts him or herself. Will instill the confidence. Anybody that comes into my office that attempts to bribe me, my staff, or anybody we do business with will be going to jail. The first person that comes in, that'll be the example. That's how we do it. Not by policy, not by banning everything, but by having a treasurer who's going to stand up and say, enough is enough. It stops on day one, and it stops with me.
On your website, I want to read a brief quote. This year, over $400,000 of your tax dollars were spent on defending elected officials brought up on criminal charges, end quote. In your opinion, should the state pay to defend elected officials if they get into trouble?
If they're getting into trouble for personal dereliction of duty, the answer is no. If they are being sued in their capacity as a public official, then yes. But here we have, let's take Rob McCord or even Barbara Hafer. Those are personal acts. Kathleen Kane, a personal act. Then the state should not be paying for it at all.
Now, just to reiterate, a moment ago you talked about there being a benefit to being a Republican treasurer in a Democratic administration. Yes. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Certainly. The ultimate checks in balance is restoring this office to an independent office. The only people that the treasurer answers to are the people of Pennsylvania. Doesn't answer to the governor, doesn't answer to the legislature, nobody else except the taxpayers and all of the people of Pennsylvania. Having had mostly Democrats in this office, and the machine that has created a culture of corruption, they're doing the bidding of the governor because they're of the same machine that got everybody elected. So you need someone who's going to stand up and be independent. In the case of politics, it needs to be somebody of the opposite party, especially this year, of all of the issues and problems, the corruption, the status quo, and nobody really addressing head-on the issues that are facing Pennsylvania. There's a person leaving Pennsylvania every 12 and a half minutes. There's a net outflow of people in Pennsylvania. Third worst bond rating in the country. Our pension crisis. So all of these need to be addressed. We have to grow Pennsylvania. We have to create jobs here in Pennsylvania because we're tearing apart communities. We're tearing apart families. When you graduate from college or even you go to tech school, wherever you have to go to get a job, that's what people are doing, and that's why they're leaving Pennsylvania. So we need an economic climate here in Pennsylvania that's going to want businesses to come in, build here in Pennsylvania, and hire the best people in the country, which are right here in Pennsylvania. And by doing that, we'll be able to grow Pennsylvania and keep our families and communities together.
What kind of specific actions can the treasurer take to improve the state's credit rating?
The biggest issue affecting our credit rating is pensions. Starting on the third Tuesday of January, hopefully when I'm sworn in, and I'll be speaking out before then as well. That has to get resolved. I am going to speak every single day on resolving that issue and not half measure. I will go against my own party. I will challenge the Democrats, the independents, anybody, to ultimately solve this problem, because not only does it have to be resolved, because that's why property taxes are increasing as fast and as dramatically as they are, because each school district is dealing with their portion of the funding of pensions. I'm just trying to find a way to communicate this. But those who are currently collecting pensions, if we don't do something, they're not going to get their money. So we have the Democrats ignoring the problem, saying we don't have a pension problem. They think they're saving the pensions for the very people that we all represent, okay? But they're not. Unless we address it now, those very people who are getting pensions won't get it, because we're going to run out of money, and that's disgraceful for any politician who's saying there isn't a problem and not willing to address it head on right now. So that's the first part in addressing one, the state's economic noose. The other is, and what's coming up, which will help the credit rating, is our budget. We are already in a deficit. The treasurer had to loan the government $1.2 billion yesterday. Mm-hmm. And we're only in, the third month of the year. Unacceptable. Okay, unacceptable. There is no rainy day fund for Pennsylvania. We have to get back to the one. This coming budget is the most important budget in a long time in Pennsylvania. So there's going to be a showdown. But we need to get all the issues on the table. And the treasurer, if I'm treasurer, will be speaking out on what we need to be doing to get Pennsylvania moving again and get into a true balanced budget without raising taxes. Pennsylvania is already one of the top 3 tax states in the whole country. So if we have people leaving Pennsylvania in a highest state, one of the top 3 in the country, then how can we expect to raise taxes and to get more revenue as these people are leaving? So we're going to need to lower the taxes and, quite frankly, build the pipeline, because we have hundreds of years of energy right below our feet here in Pennsylvania, which will be the economic boom to Pennsylvania.
On the issue of the budget, you had referred to this a little earlier in our discussion during last year's impasse. The state treasury released funding for several agencies and the legislative caucuses without a complete budget. What specifically would you have done differently?
There are two particular issues. Let's talk about corrections. The governor line item vetoed it was a $2 billion budget. He line item vetoed $1 billion. So essentially there's a $1 billion budget. He did that because he knew that the treasurer would continue to fund it. However, once the legislature said, and the governor, $1 billion, that's it. The treasurer has no authority whatsoever. None. Not health, welfare, and safety. None. To spend one more dime than that $1 billion. They continued to pay that money. Why? Okay, I have no idea, because I have no idea what the political issue was that they were trying to solve. So when on the treasurer, I'm going to put up on my website exactly what will and will not be paid and the legal authority behind it. Because it's not the treasurer's role, nor is it legal for him or her to sit there and say, I will pay this, but I won't pay that. I'm going to pay this, but I won't pay that. The office is not the fourth branch of government. It's an independent office, and the authority comes from the legislature and the governor